So Bill, thank you very much for joining us today to talk about your work and to discuss our new parameters project. So I just wanted to start by telling you a bit about the project. Storytelling is really at the heart of our project, and we want to inspire people to explore and document their place. So be it their surroundings on their daily walk, their homes, their communities, as we live in this time of new restrictions. So I wanted to ask, could you tell us the story of how photography came to be such an important part of your life?
Yes, I could even start before photography entered my life. And so I was in the aircraft industry as a draftsman, and I was a very unhappy draftsman. I wasn't at ease at all at a drawing board, despite the fact that I could draw and was quite good at drawing. But I had this unease about being in the aircraft, being at a drawing board. And at one stage in the early 50s, or maybe 1956, I became friendly with a guy who sort of introduced me to Stanley Kubrick, the filmmaker. And the pair of us used to spend lunchtimes talking about Stanley Kubrick's early films, which one of them was The Killing, and the other was Paths of Glory. And he was an amazing man. And it occurred to me as I got more and more interested in him that I was able to see the quality, and I was able to perceive that quality. And I've often wondered to myself, what is it? Why should I be recognizing this amazing filmmaker and knowing that it's great? And I thought, perhaps I have some kind of ability. Now, I didn't even own a camera at that stage. I was trying to struggle with this unhappiness with the aircraft industry and me being and despite the fact that when I was in the workshop floor, I was a happy fella. But when I went into a drawing office, it was like a regimentation. I hated it. But then I ended up at one stage beside a Newton Arts man, another draftsman. And this man was called Davy Moore. And he was actually a close friend of my mother's family. And in various conversations, he urged me to read various books, one of which was a book called The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist by a man called Robert Tressel. And it changed my worldview completely. Shortly after that, I bought my first camera and was in Drogheda. I paid £2.12 and 6, and it was a little cheapie, West German cheapie. And the purpose was to photograph my children because I was married. By this time, I was about 1 year married. It was 1958 that I bought the camera, and it was an amazing thing. But that guy, Davy Moore, altered my life. And I urge people to search that book out. I really do. It turns out that people like David Irvine, the late David Irvine, carried that book everywhere. Now, he was a loyalist politician, as you well know, but that book was with David Irvine all time. So anyway, yeah, so that started me with that little camera, that little West German camera. One roll of film went through it, and I still have a couple of prints out of that one roll.
Your very first roll?
My very first roll. Just 2 prints. And now, some years passed before I started, and I got goodish cameras. So at the very beginning, I was in a club for a while, and pictorialism, that is nice landscape pictorialism, was in the vein with the clubs. But as the troubles started to hint, the terrible beginnings of the troubles, it started to make me think in terms of trying to photograph some of the aspects, because I was particularly critical of sectarianism. And I had come to the conclusion that we in Northern Ireland had been ruled by sectarian politics. I was very critical of it, but I began to take occasional trips into West Belfast with my camera and a friend called Dave Scott, who unfortunately we fell out later. A few years later we fell out, and he went to Australia. And so, yeah.
But he was the first one that you sort of went on these documenting adventures together with? Yeah.
Yes. We went to Pound Loney. We also went to the Shankill and did a few pictures. And it was early days, and one or two pictures I treasure from that very early period.
So you really started doing photography you saw it as a vehicle to sort of highlight and educate and show others the things that you and others were experiencing in Northern Ireland?
Yes, to a degree that might be true, but it was as much an investigation on my part for my own satisfaction.
For yourself. That's great though. Thank you so much for the insight there. I just wanted to ask, in your book with Robert Johnson, Images of Belfast, there's a chapter entitled The Partitions Are Frail, which talks about the heightened security brought in during the Troubles and how quickly this became normal. Given the recent restriction to our lives due to the pandemic, could you tell us what it was like to adapt to the new boundaries of life during the Troubles? And do you feel that they draw some parallels to life now?
Yes. You see, by the time of the Troubles, well, actually, 1969 alerted me to things were pretty awful. So I went in on a journey to the Falls Road after the awful burnings of 1969. And I just had to bear up and stick to my guns. In fact, the stress of that one visit gave me a bad back for a period of time.
Yeah, it was quite traumatizing.
You could have cut the atmosphere. You literally could have cut the atmosphere with a knife. So adapting to that kind of stress feeling was so important in order to be able to function as a photographer, as a documentary photographer. You had to try and treat yourself in a way that didn't give you these stresses. So yeah, it was hard to adapt to. Should I say, I can't claim to large amounts of work during those times. I was probably being very selective and trying to just find meanings for why we were suffering what we were suffering. And so search for meaning, search for understanding and meaning was high in my thoughts.
And do you feel that now, because when we were discussing the Troubles and living then, when you had that sense of surveillance, being observed, where you were going, boundaries, borders, in a way it does sort of reflect how we're living in this current climate, this idea of new restrictions coming in and external control to try and keep us safe. Does it remind you, or do those feelings resonate in any way to the Troubles, what we're currently living in?
They absolutely do. In fact, yeah, I think it dawned on me that it was just as important to try and relax yourself during those early periods of Troubles as it was to know about your camera and how it operated. So you were trying to treat yourself. You're trying to keep yourself safe. Keep yourself safe from the danger and from being too much affected by the general tensions.
Yeah, it was around. And when it came to actually learning about your camera, Bill, like, obviously now there's a lot of online tutorials and stuff on the internet, so we're very lucky in that respect. How did you begin learning how to use your camera itself? Did that come through other people mentoring you, or just learning on the job?
Yeah, early on, I think it came to me sort of very naturally. There was f-stops and there was shutter speeds, and I quickly grasped that you had to get them both correct to make a nice picture, and to not shake the camera, and to compose. And so composition came a bit natural to me. People in those early days in the club said, your composition's lovely. So I had a kind of a wee natural way of composing.
Brilliant. I wanted to move on and ask you about your Sandy Row body of work. So you created a significant body of work in Sandy Row in 1974 and beyond. These images give us an intimate insight into the homes and lives of those who live there. So some of the participants who are maybe taking part of our project may not be able to get out of their homes to document their surroundings, so they might be documenting their living space. So I wanted to ask, were you able to get a sense of the individuals' lives that you were photographing from what their homes revealed about them?
Yes, the thing about Sandy Row, quite early when I began that project, I was in a bar called the Klondike Bar. And as I became familiar with the people there, the word just went round the community that I'm all right, that I was not a spy for any security body or anything, that I was okay. And so when I went about the process of photographing, I was well trusted, and I could sense it myself that they liked me.
You were welcomed into the community then?
I was welcomed, and never, except for one occasion when a tartan wearing guy came forward to me and said, "What are you up to?" And I knew there was a sinister in his manner of speaking, but I had a letter that had been obtained for me by a Newton Orange loyalist. We went to East Belfast UDA and got me a letter that said I was okay. So I pulled this letter out, and luckily enough, I mean, I could have ended up being interrogated in a romper room.
So at
If
least,
you would, do you know what a romper room was?
no, not really. Do you want to fill me in?
Well, a romper room was where you could have been tortured. You could have been given a hiding in order to get information out of you.
So it was really paramount that you
So
were.
now we can talk, we can say, we can realize it's sort of funny, but they were very serious at that time. But I had that letter saved me from that risk.
That was your protection. And how did
And I
you?
still have
Have you still got the letter?
I still got the letter.
Would be fascinating to see it. Hang on to that for sure. Regarding going into people's houses, then, I suppose that's another level of trust and intimacy, to go into someone's home and photograph. Did you find out anything interesting about the people that were living in those spaces? Did you get to know them as you were working?
Yes, I did. And it's a question of once you're on a level of trust with those people, that you can almost say anything to them, and they know that you're sincerely wanting to portray their lives. Yeah. So that's very much true what you just said.
Oh, that's great, and that's what we're hoping, that maybe, for us, that's why we're created this project. We're hoping that people will document this contemporary Northern Ireland landscape, both internally within their homes and externally on their daily walk. So it's lovely to hear what you were saying about just picking up on those pieces of information in people's home and that trust. And I suppose it takes people to trust to share their work with us as well. So it's really nice hearing how you earned people's trust. And I wanted to ask as well, so you're a fellow Newton Artsman like myself, and so did you find it easy integrating into different communities to create images? So you touched on that there of needing this letter of protection, but did you find that once people sort of knew why you were there to document, that allowed you to develop, would you say you developed friendships with people, or was it more a working relationship, or a bit of both?
Well, there was a friendship thing from time to time. You know, there was a man called Walter Corey. Walter Corey, lovely man, and he had been decorated in World War II. So he was a lovely man and an absolute gentleman. I took many pictures of him. And another particular person that I was a man called Harry Creighton, Creighton. And in World War I, he had been a soldier. But whenever he was on leave, he thought that a sailor suit would pull the women better. So he hired a sailor suit to go out on the town to get the girls.
I love it.
And he told that story proudly. He told it proudly.
And last week when we spoke as well, you mentioned, we were talking about your image of the little drummer boy that you took as well. And you were saying to me that you still stay in contact with him.
Yes, his name is Hugh Murtaugh. And it was in the 90s, it was in the 2010 period that I actually got to meet him. At the time of the original child picture, I just snapped it and might have realized that I had got something special, but didn't fully. So I didn't have any more dealings with the child until very much more recent times.
Recently, and then you were saying he's a grandfather himself now.
Yes, he has a grandchild who's identical to the boy with the cardboard box drum.
That's amazing. I know it's really striking when you see that image to think that he's now a grandfather. It's such a timeless and iconic image. And that was something I was wondering as well. Like a lot of your work that you've created these beautiful iconic images of our history, but did you know at the time that they would become such pivotal and informative works? Or was it more that you were just documenting everyday life?
Well, I was trying my best to make what might be called good pictures, right? But just recording, I had only 2 lenses, a normal and a wide angle. So limited equipment, not because I couldn't afford it, although mind you, I wasn't. By the time I was doing that, I hadn't got a great amount of money, but I had enough equipment to cover me, and a wide angle and a 50mm was sufficient, you know. There's a picture I took of 2 women in white coats. They were in their 70s, possibly even maybe more, and they were outside a shop, and they're like a mirror image of each other. And when a chap called Arthur Watson and I had a 2-man show after we graduated at the college, and a great art critic for the newsletter or some other newspaper was at the opening night. And Arthur Watson saw her tapping her head gently against, looking at this picture of those 2 women. And she said, I have seen drawings engravings, sculpture, paintings, everything. Nothing has affected me like that picture did, which really amazed us. Mercy Hunter was her name.
Mhm.
She's now dead, but Mercy Hunter actually said that.
Oh, and sort of give you that.
Don't want to be, don't I don't want to sound boastful. I just
Not at all, but it's always, as an artist, when you're making work, it's only, you often only see it freshly through the eyes of others, don't you? So it's lovely when you get that kind of feedback, because you went and studied photography, was it, Bill?
I did. As a background story to that, in 1971, my job at Shorten Harlan's came to an end. I was in a big redundancy of 150 people. And so I had lost my job. Then, and a few months later, I was found to have TB in one of my kidneys. And that kidney, I spent 6 months, and at the end of the 6 months, the kidney was removed in the city hospital. And when I came through that, I came through it, and I was told by the medical people, look, you're a healthy man. You should be an ill man, but you're not. I realized that if I could do that, I could do anything. And that's what made me apply as a mature student, probably age 34, to go to the College of Art. That's how I come to be there.
That's
And
amazing.
I chose documentary
Uh-huh.
against the advice of my tutors,
Uh-huh.
who wanted me to do things like industrial or fashion
Uh-huh.
or stuff like that.
But you've always been then interested in life and people, really, and telling their stories.
Yes, 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 absolutely.
That's amazing, Bill. I wanted to ask as well. So, due to the pandemic and the surrounding social distancing restrictions, um, there's been lots of photographers have started taking portraits of people within households on their doorsteps, so they're able to photograph them from a safe distance. And this instantly reminded me of the powerful series of doorstep portraits you took during your project on Sandy Row. So I was wondering, could you tell us a bit about this experience and what you enjoyed about meeting the residents within a new community?
Yes, it's hard to word this because it was just in the general practice of the photographs I was doing. So I would go meet people and have them at their door,
Uh,
and housewives, all kinds of
Different.
types of people.
Uh-huh.
There's one particular picture of a father and his child, and there's a little gate,
Yes, I'd
a
say that.
little gate,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there looking over the gate straight at me. And there was a great photographer, an American, in the 30s or 20s even. The name's escaping me, but it was said of this guy that he's one of the few people who could make a work of art in the form of a simple straight picture of a person. Simple, ordinary straight picture. And I took that almost like a challenge that if I couldn't make a nice, satisfying picture with the simplest of approaches, I wouldn't be contented.
So did you just go and call at the doors of these houses and ask people to take part, or um, how did it all work that
Well,
you got involved?
it would vary a lot. Sometimes people would see you wandering about and come open the door and actually, what are you doing, son? Some very senior women would say son too, although I was in my 30s. I was already in my 30s, and I think son. But yes, it was just a part of the whole process of photographing, you know.
So it seems like
And
you really.
actually, there was a little bit of, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry. It seemed like you really integrated into the communities.
Yeah, yeah. There was a shot I took looking down on a family, a husband, wife, and one of their sons. And the woman said to me, "Show what the landlords do to us, son." And she was for all the world like the Steinbeck film of a book for Steinbeck of Ma and the Grapes of Wrath.
Mm.
And that woman, she reminded me of Ma, the character in John Steinbeck's book.
Do you think she recognized the power then of photography as this like a tool of visual communication? So she knew the power and the significance of you taking an image to kind of tell that story of how they were living.
Yes, she seemed to convey that to me.
Yeah, oh, that's brilliant. It leads quite well into our next question. So what I feel is very significant about your work is how it challenges the perceptions of Northern Irish life. So I think there's a real beauty and a real strength within the imagery that tell wider stories about the culture, community pride, along with the challenges and joys of life in Northern Ireland. So I just wanted to ask, did you feel a social responsibility to shed light on these stories using your photography skills?
Yes, yes, I could. My overall view of the world, which was changed by the book, The Ragged Trouser Philanthropist, let me view the working class people of Belfast or anywhere as the working class people, not Catholics, not Protestants,
Just working
but
class.
working class people. Yes.
So it's sort of a united theme and not really linked in any way to religion.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we had spoke last week about the image that you created of outside the Grand Opera House, in Belfast, and you were saying it was of a room full of people that were enjoying the opera, enjoying the drinks and enjoying the good life, and then there was two young women on the street underneath, and you said you really enjoyed the fact that it sort of captured the social partitions in many ways of
Very
life.
much. Yeah.
Is that something you're very interested in within your work, of showing these contradictions in society?
Very much. It's amazing. Occasionally, when a child would say, "Oh, take my photo, mister," and it would annoy me, and I was wrong to be annoyed in such a situation like that. And those two girls underneath the Opera House bar, whatever you call, they said, "Take our photo." And I respond, I did, and I made a picture that I'm proud of there, particularly.
That just happened as you were just journeying about Belfast. That just unfolded
Yeah,
naturally.
yeah. My purpose later that evening was to go in and show the crowds in the Opera House, to photograph them for the book Images of Belfast. But that was a gift, a lucky that I got those two children.
Yeah, that really was. It tells so much in that image, doesn't it? It speaks volumes and tells us so much. It's amazing to know that it happened. We're hoping as our participants go about their daily life that they'll create magical moments like this as well. You worked as well as a stills photographer on the 1986 documentary Steel Chest, Nail in the Boot and the Barking Dog, which told the story of the Belfast shipyard and the iconic Harland and Wolff. So I was wondering, could you tell us about the insights you gained into the shipyard community and the workers' lives during your time there?
Yes, thing being, David Hammond, an absolutely renowned man, ran a firm called Flying Fox Films. Right? Flying Fox Films was the company that produced Steel Chest, Nail in the Boot, and the Barking Dog. And Hammond admired my photography and asked me would I do stills for him. Well, it was amazing, because during my period of time at the shipyard, I encountered a foreman and assistant foreman who had known an uncle of mine, a very entertaining, married to my mother's sister. And when these two men realized that I was connected to Norman Lamont, they loved Norman Lamont. They were absolutely great. So that was an amazing experience for me. They would have took me, they would have done anything for me because I had known Norman Lamont. And he was an East Belfast man, but a very natural entertainer type person. And they had loved him. It was just quite amazing. But the photographs that I was taking, I mean, I would do lunchtime, and it would be Bible group, and they would be poring over the Holy Bible, and then I would go to a group, a card school. So all these types of people that I was free to photograph and give them permission to. It was just amazing.
So within the shipyard, then there was just different collectives of people with different interests. Like, it's fascinating to think that there was a prayer group there and a game school, and like, sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, during lunch. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
And what was the working conditions like there, Bill?
Pretty good, you know. They were comfortable, and the engine works wasn't particularly amazing. Now it was almost independent of the overall shipyard. That's where the engines were constructed and all, but amazing things went on, you know.
And it seems like you got all access to wherever you wanted to go within the shipyard as well. What was your kind of favorite moments there?
Favorite moments? Favorite moment was meeting those two foremen. Regarding Norman. Yeah.
And was there any other kind of stories from that time that you'd like to share with us?
Well, that's about most. I mean, it's 1987, so you know, I can't think of any other things that are particularly significant, except to say that on occasional moments, David Hammond followed where I went and saw things that he took for the film because I took an interest. It was only an occasional thing, but he was led to subject matter that I had shown to be interested in.
Because I love that body of work, you know, and I thought there's a beautiful contrast between the obviously industrial images, but also you did a beautiful series of portraits of the workers, but there's a real intimacy in your portrait work, and I was wondering, did that just come naturally because of your rapport with people, or did you find you ever needed to sort of work with people to help them feel relaxed in front of the camera? Because you always seem to capture people in a very honest and very intimate manner.
Yes, I've often wondered about that, why that should be. But I think I look upon myself as truthful, you know. So like when I'm looking, I'm sort of like investigating. I'm trying to find the sense of people so that maybe that communicates to a person and they will show themselves better to me because I convey possibly. I mean, you see, one of the things about invasion of privacy is a thing that has to be always considered. So you're at risk at times, but I have seldom encountered bad reactions in approaching people for to take their picture.
If anything, it sounds like people have wanted to be a part of your projects and a part of the work, and I suppose it makes someone feel special as well, getting their photo taken in a way, doesn't it? They're an interesting subject.
Yeah, possibly that could be true.
It's pretty cool.
See, the gardener, for example, the gardener up to his waist in water at the tropical ravine. It was called, I would turn out, we found him later, Frankie Quinn and I. He was named Andrew Bingham. John Hewitt, when the book Images came out, John Hewitt met me one day in the street up Stranmillis Road, I think. He says, Mr. Kirk, he actually used Mr. Kirk. He says, you need take no more photos because you have found something sublime there. And he was as much as saying, I couldn't be topped. This was the gardener. He mentioned Greek gods and things like that. He's an amazing man, John Hewitt. The pub, of course, as you know, is called after him.
What a compliment to receive on your work as well.
And he was a smashing man. Like, I mean, that sounds a wee bit boastful, but don't want to be.
Not at all, Bill. And that leads us nicely in. I wanted to ask about your favourite image of your work. So if there was a picture that you loved creating, and if there was a story and a significance as to why.
Loads and loads of people say that the street picture with the megaphone in front of his face is my strongest. And I would mostly sort of agree with that. But that picture of the gardener up to his waist in water pulls me strongly, because it's funny. I had been sent to a tropical ravine to take a picture of a famous horticulturist called Craig Wallace. Now, he, parks and cemeteries, he was the boss of them all. So I went along at the instructions of Blackstaff Press, Anne Tannehill and Michael Burns, to name them, sent me and said, I want you to take a portrait of Craig Wallace. So I was taking a snap or two of Craig Wallace when I sighted that man in the water, and I almost fell backwards. It brought me out in pimples. It brought me out in goosebumps. It was just an amazing to encounter that. And I photographed it, and that's what's one of my favorites.
And you mentioned there as well your iconic image of the street preacher. What was it as well that captures you about that image?
Well, I came along, it was Ann Street in Belfast, and I saw the possible good picture might come out of this. And he was preaching away, and I didn't try and sneak up or anything. I was there facing him completely. And I think he tried to destroy my picture by putting the megaphone directly in front of his face. Whereas instead of ruining it, it made the picture.
That was lucky again.
Sam, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant, Bill. Thank you. So as our participants prepare themselves to start documenting their communities and place, helping us to create a picture of contemporary Northern Ireland, I just wanted to ask, in your opinion, how do you think a photograph can tell a story?
Yes, I've thought about that. And if you find an object, however mundane, and you take a satisfying picture of it, there's a certain emotion can be aroused in the viewing of that image. And if you can capture emotion, then it can tell a story to the viewer, the eventual viewer. Hopefully that would be the case, you know. And you know, there's a new school. There's modern photography is minimalist to a very great degree. And when it goes most minimal, sometimes I am very doubtful about it when it goes to the extreme of minimalism. So to convey our surroundings and the political situation that faces us, I think it's important for us to look at it as it really is, and and even to question our situation. I think that's so important as we face these restrictions on our lives, and dear knows how long they may go on.
I know, that's it. It's the uncertainty, isn't it?
It's the uncertainty.
With everything.
And if they lift restrictions too soon, my goodness, what will happen if there's a new wave?
Yeah.
It's all on TV all the time. I'm being repetitive here.
Oh, not at all. But I think that's for me, even you know, getting to see, it's such a unique time to see when we live. You know, the pandemic in itself is one thing, but even going around your towns and your cities and the streets are empty. I've never had an experience in my life where I see the world from this way. So that's where, again, we thought it would be really amazing for people to show us their perspectives of this unique time. And, you know, please, life will be restored to normal, or a new kind of normal. But that's why we kind of felt it was very significant to try and capture this moment, just as you have captured so many important moments as well in our history. So thank you for that insight there, Bill, as well. I know you have maybe a few photos. Was there some photos you wanted to share with us before I ask my last question?
There's a few here. There are a few here. I'll let you see them. But there's a wee thing I want to tell you on the few unlocked areas of beauty that Mary and I have been able to go walks on. There's a Clandyboy forest area. And prior to leaves being on the trees, Mary and I walked in these places. And there was quite a lot of decaying trees and trees blown down and broken up trees even. And it's funny, the echo of the health issue that's happening to us. It was almost that you could do a little essay, a little set of pictures that conveyed that echo.
That's a really beautiful observation, Bill, and I think that will really help our participants as they go out and they look at their surroundings, you know, through fresh eyes after your conversation. It's really interesting to hear the things that you're seeing and that you're inspired by at this time.
Yes. There's a picture of Gilles Perez, who was 4 times the president of Magnum Photos in Paris and New York. And this is...
Oh, the kissing couple.
Now, that's Gilles Perez. And this girl we failed to find. So that's 1974. Now that girl, obviously he was having a wee bit of a fling there, but it's the heart sheet that's set between it. And it's one of those lucky little things. And that's Napier Street, Sandy Row, with the bonfire, the remains. This is seldom seen. And that is 1969, the day after the horrors of Bombay Street. And that is from the Falls Road looking up towards Dover Street. That is Dover Street. And I'm so fond of that. And there's a woman there with a mask, not a mask, a scarf. Very Irish, very Irish.
And can you remember how the atmosphere felt when you were taking images?
Yes, that's the day I took a bad back.
Oh.
That's the day I literally took a bad back. I'll let you see one or two little things. This was Victoria Park, 1966. And it says on the headline on the paper, "Hook a man the scientific way." So they're an amazing couple of people. amazing couple of people. A very early shot that I was, and this was a sandwich girl in the Rotterdam bar with that figurine.
Nice figurine behind her. Uh-huh.
Yes, that figurine ape with the baby. I'm kind of fond of that. That's more recent now. That would be late 90s. That would have been late 90s. This is one that I'm really fond of because now there's police jeeps. It was the 12th of July 1983. And that is a bit, that has a minimalism thing, but I liked it.
Sorry, go on ahead, Bill. What were you saying there? You liked it?
It has this minimalism. You have to work at the picture. It's almost like it's like a tapestry.
Yeah,
a little bit like a tapestry.
You capture the energy of the
Yes,
experience.
and there's a guy in there with a flute. You have to go close, you can mean, but there's a guy with a flute. He's a bandsman with his flute still in his hand.
He's the one sitting on the grass. I can see him there.
You can see him and the flute.
I can.
And it's had a nice large print size. You can go and see it better, you know. But anyway.
Okay, so I'll ask you our last question, and thank you so much for sharing those images with us. It's really appreciated. So, lastly, we just wanted to know if there was any tips, hints, or advice that you would like to share with our participants for when they start to capture their own images.
Yes. For starters, be investigative. Want to understand your world. I don't want to sound preachy here, but want to understand your world. Hang loose. Use your camera. Mostly, if you're using a phone, it starts up with the full wide angle. And okay, loads of people don't move it off the way, but you should, maybe if you want to take a close face, you should move it off wide angle so as to take a full face or whatever close in object that you want to show. So that study the photo mode off your camera, really, and take advice on the internet about the use of it. So that would be really good. And question everything about the world. Want to know why such situations as Northern Ireland's particular problems. Want to know why they arise like that. And even Donald Trump. See Donald Trump for what he is. That's my biggest, strongest piece.
So you want them to be curious and investigative and use their, I suppose that's it, participants to use their own power and understanding to show us what they want to show about the world, really, in this project.
Well, very, very true. Very true. Yeah. And be careful and steady with your camera. Try and get it as sharp as you can get it. You see? So that
really experiment.
Yeah, but they're amazingly capable. Phones now are really capable. And be adventurous, and is a good way of putting it too. And if you go walks, if it's try and see meanings in other types of objects and shapes of things. And as you practice, composition would come to you. My daughter uses Huawei. And she amazes me. My daughter Diane, and she really amazes me, you know, with her photography.
She's inherited that from you, Bill.
Maybe.
Listen, thank you so much, Bill, for all your time and insight. I think all your advice will be so welcomed by our participants, and I think it'll be so helpful for them going out to begin their journeys and documentation of their surroundings. And thank you for being so open with us and sharing your stories and experience. It's really so appreciated.
Thank you for the fact that it's over. And I can relax.
You feel better now?
Yeah.